recording, right? Because we'll be
Yeah.
recording this session and it'll go on.
Yeah, it's fine.
So hello, everybody. Welcome to this conversation called A Little More Closer. Today is Mental Health Day, and the theme of this year is mental health for all, greater access, greater investment, and greater access. So on this day, we thought we'll collect the team of some of our therapists at Positive Perspective and have a conversation about the theme and what, how they incorporate this in their work and their lives. I'm Rafat and I'm a therapist. I work with PAUSE. I do individual therapy and group counseling. And I'm a part of various other projects. I would want you all to just introduce yourself, guys. Talk a little bit about yourself and the populations that you work with. Whoever wants to go first can start.
Okay, I'll go. My name is Aarti. I'm the founder at Positive Perspective, and I'm also a clinical psychologist and a national certified counselor. So I've been in practice for about 15 years now, and I've seen a wide range of clients. I'm trained as a generalist, which means that I see people from all walks of life. My specialization, however, I think over the years I've specialized in working with couples, working with queer clients, and all in sundry, I want to say. I think I have worked with children, families, and individuals as well. And I'm a supervisor and a teacher also. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
I'm going next. So I'm Madhuri. I'm also a counselor at Positive Perspective, and I work with couples, individuals, and older people, individuals also. And I also once in a while see young people also. And yeah, I'm trained in couples therapy and narrative and other kinds of modalities that we use at PAUSE. Good to be here today.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, so I'm Pooja. I am also a therapist at Pause for Perspective. I think like everybody else here, I'm trained in mindfulness and narrative and couples work. I primarily work with individuals and children and queer folk as well. And yeah.
Thank you, Pooja.
Hi, my name is Varsha, and I work as a therapist too at Positive Perspective. And I mostly see individual clients along with couples as well, around the after 20 plus years of age. And I'm trained in narrative and mindfulness modalities too, along with other practices, other modalities that we follow here. And it's good to be here and to have this conversation. I'm excited for this.
Thanks, Varsha. So the hope for today's conversation was to just gather together a bunch of our therapists and just talk about the diverse clients that they work with, how inclusivity and intersectionality looks like in their work. And going along with the theme of this year, which is mental health for all, greater investment, greater access. My next question, guys, for all of you is, what does this mean in the work that you do? And how is it reflected in what you do? And just if there's an instance coming up while you talk about what this means to you, you can share that with us. So yeah.
Okay, I'll I'll go. So greater investment, greater access. I think I'll speak for PAUSE. primarily because I think as an organization we've been looking at. We started off as it's very quite mainstream in the sense that, how does a typical psychotherapist start? You start as a private practitioner, typically. I mean, of course, you can work in different settings like hospitals or schools, but the way Pause for Perspective started was I started off as a private practitioner, and then we built a community of women primarily, women therapists, women mental health workers who um, the intention was to build community of professionals who can support one another and grow alongside with one another. So we began in this way, and then we moved into. So as we have been doing this work, we've found that and as more people have come together, now we are almost about 18 of us mental health practitioners. So I think the more of us have come together, the more ideas have generated, and we have been able to sort of work with individuals, and we've seen that over the course of time, typically a mental health practitioner's training, especially if you're in the psychology field, right, like MA Psych, if you've done MPhil Psych, you've done, typically what the training is quite mainstream in that you are looking specifically at mental health issues and how to work with mental health issues from that very individual frame of that person, right? What is going on with that person? How do we quote unquote fix the person or work with that person? But over the course of working with you all, right, and working with our team, what we have discovered is that that's such a narrow frame of looking at mental health work and care work itself, because we were starting to see that no, I mean, we need like the bigger community, the next the core community of an individual, maybe a family or some friends, but then there are these impacts of the institutions that they are affiliated to, and then the larger system that they work with. Everything is influencing the individual's mental health. So we started to see that we needed to do way more than what a typical psychologist or psychotherapist training is. And so which is why Pause began to do a lot of other workshops of holding spaces for people with different life experiences, so marginalized groups. We also went out, and we've gone out and done a lot of that work with communities, marginalized communities in Hyderabad or a little off of Hyderabad as well, with the hope that we can work with communities and look at how care looks like, and be able to specifically affirm identities of people and experiences that people have, because that seems like better mental health care for all. So it's a very broad sort of frame of how we have worked as a team over the years. Yeah, does
Yeah,
anybody?
I kind of agree with what you said, because when we ended our master's program, we had this very narrow idea that mental health means these disorders and how to fix them. But I think like with the work that we have done in the last years, I've come to realize that it's for all. It's so broad, and then we need to like provide it and give access to all to have that. And as you were talking, I could relate. Yeah. Others, how what does yeah.
So,
And
as you both said, right? See, an individual walks in for therapy, but it's not only the problem is not located in the individual's life as an individual, right? They live in a
yeah.
community, they live in a context, and there are other, it's peopled by other people and situations, and it also has an impact. And what the pause is doing is great, that going into communities and educating people about mental health and all that sensitizes people to be aware that people are impacted by the lived experiences of everyday living, right, in different contexts, and it has a bearing on their everyday mental health. That's so true.
And that's how intersectionality comes in, right? Like it's so individual initially, but then we realize that there's so much of intersections that we need to look at. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was going to
Pooja
say
and
that
Varsha, any thoughts?
one
Yeah.
of the things that stands out to me while we're talking about accessibility and opening it up to the communities as well is, I think for me, my journey at Pause and sort of working in this space has been about like a couple of things that stand out are just opening spaces for children and finding ways of creating spaces for children as well in therapy that challenge the way mainstream therapy needs to look like outside rooms even, right? And what it needs to look like. Similarly, I think, sort of just having spaces of gathering community and offering mental health in those ways as well, beyond individual spaces. So those are some of the things that come to my mind. Yeah, that's something that I wanted to add.
Yeah, and uh, Varsha, did you have something to add?
No, ma'am, you can go ahead.
Okay. What I was going to say is, even in the ways that we see people now is starkly different from the typical training one might have had, and that we have sort of had to journey with. And I think the way that we see people is kind of through that frame of, what kind of access does the person have itself within the context to have mental health that is in the way that they want their mental health to be, and why, and what factors play into why a person's space is how a person's space is sort of impacting their mental health. I think we look a lot into that in our work with individuals as well. So I think in that way, our individual work has also opened up and allowed for mental health to, and acknowledge that mental health is political, right? That there are these things that play into people's lives that impact people, and how are people already responding and affirming those ways of how people are responding has become important for us in our work as well. So
Yeah,
individually too, the focus has sort of broadened in holding people's lives more holistically.
yeah. Varsha, do you have
So
something to add?
agreeing to what ma'am was saying, yeah. So agreeing to what ma'am was saying about how the work that we do here at Pause, we want to be able to provide to the community. And what was coming up for me when we talk about greater investment and greater access is the podcast that we've started recently
Mm,
at Pause. That was our intention again behind doing the podcast, was that to make mental health accessible to everyone, and that was the reason why we were doing it in regional languages and not in English. We're doing it in Hyderabadi and Telugu, so that we can reach out to all the populations out there, and so that we can help them understand from our end whatever that we can do. So that was coming up for me when we're talking about this, that how it's important for us to be able to give back to the community or in our own ways. So yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and also to add to that, because of the training that we have, mental health and the way that we might approach people's life is through the English language. But
mm,
not many of us live our lives in the English language, right? Like, how do you and the hope also of doing the podcast is to be able to incorporate the way that I'm thinking into the work that I'm doing with the people that I see, right? So how can I sort of step into and have language for the nuances of, let's say, therapy in languages that feel experience near for me? So yeah, another goal of that.
yeah. This conversation is really making me feel so happy because, when we spoke about how our approach is so diverse, how we incorporate different languages, we see different populations, be it children, queer folk, couples, or, any other population, and also just our approach with each of these people, like we're so intersectional in our work, and how that in itself is greater access, and yeah, just broadening it up. um, Moving to the next question, guys. Can we have you all share some struggles and some joys that you personally go through as therapist while you kind of juggle with the concepts of intersectionality, diversity, inclusivity, and just accessibility to all? So, any struggles that you face, and any joys that come out of this process? Hi, Ruhi, you can add to the conversation.
Hello, can't like miss this conversation. So I'm so happy to be here. Yeah. Thank you, Rafal.
Yes.
I was so fixed on being excited about Ruhi is here. I can't remember the question. I'm sorry. Like, can you ask the question?
Okay. Oh, yes, I can. So I just said that as therapists, when we talk about these concepts of diversity, inclusivity, intersectionality, and providing, increasing our accessibility, what are some of these struggles that we go through in our work, and what are the joys that we experience as we go through these struggles? Yeah.
I think one of the first things that comes to my mind when you just asked that is a recent conversation I think I was having in a training space with our interns about how sometimes the struggle with language really shows up because our training has been in English to sort of frame certain words in English, and that does become a challenge when working with people whose experiences like we don't, don't English doesn't encapsulate the experience really. But some of the joys also that I have found in working in that space is also then finding words and sort of sitting and just using words that feel very experience near, even if it's words like ditch pitch or kaisa to bhi ho raha, or just like phrases like
Yeah.
that come up in sessions, and then we sort of hold them close. So I think that's just one instance where the struggles and the joys
Yeah.
sort of intersect.
I think that's a big one, Pooja. I mean, language does come in the way a lot of times, especially if the client does not know English that well. I feel so incompetent. I'm like, how do I, give my services without being able to talk? So, yeah, that's truly one of the biggest.
Yeah.
Others
So
coming
recently,
up, guys. Yeah.
sorry, Rafa.
No, no, go
Can I
ahead.
speak?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So recently,
Is it just me or nobody can hear?
me and Varsha were. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. So I and Varsha were doing a podcast in Telugu. Okay. So we were struggling with some words which are not regular, everyday words in Telugu for us to use in our practice as psychologists. So we went on Google and searched for those words, and the stupid Google was giving English words in Telugu script. Like, what is this? How can mental health only be in English and not in our everyday language? Yeah, so that also affects accessibility, right? It sounds like mental health is some elitist
Mm,
Mm. Oops.
Again.
concept or some uh, data get lost again.
Elitist concept.
Yeah, because it felt like, what is this? Mental health is sounding like an elitist concept or something that only educated or a certain class of people, social class of people can access or even think about, right? But
yeah.
that's not the case, right? And that again, I mean, came up for us like, oh my God, this is so political.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other struggles and joys, guys, apart from language?
I think for me, did someone else want to go?
No.
Okay. For me, it has been, it's been about this idea that, we're all, the system is in our heads. It could be any system, right? Patriarchy, capitalism, right? Sexism, classism, casteism, right? We're all born within the system, and the system is in our heads. So when we're doing mental health work and we're trying to deconstruct these ideas, as mental health practitioners, as human beings and mental health practitioners, we hold a very important role. I mean, we have power in this space, right? Because you are an expert, socially sanctioned expert, right? So as an expert, we have a lot of power in the room to influence the person, but and to remember that you also have these other frames, and to be very careful of how you are you're hoping to hold your influence with awareness and transparency with the person that you're seeing. It's very important for all of us. I know that we have all had this conversation. And how do we hold that influence? How do we make visible that influence to the person that who's consulting with us? And how do we ensure that care is taken in deconstructing these ideas that are so part of our lived experience? And how do we know that we're actually deconstructing an idea, especially if you don't have a lived experience of that idea, of a certain identity, right? If you're straight and you're working with a queer person, are you aware of what frames are in your head and your lived experience, and are you able to talk to that experience and allow space for the person in this space to talk about their experience and not be ostracized, judged, and so forth? The things that they feel marginalized experiences are present in the world outside. Do you want that to be repeated in therapy, right? So that's a big challenge, but it's also a huge source of joy. Like if I can deconstruct with the people that I'm working with, and I'm sort of calling out a system within that individual space, what a win it is, because you're really standing in alliance with the person, and you're saying we're resisting together systems that oppress us together. So in that way, I think there is joy, there is a lot of power in the space, and there is as a result, there's a challenge that is put forth in front of us. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree with what you said about the struggle of deconstructing, and also being aware that we do not, because these systems are in us and we are a part of the system, and like we sometimes become those systems that might be oppressive. So just being aware, and it's such a balance and a tricky balance that we have to maintain. Yeah. And I kind of experience this even in the groups that I work with. Uh, when we the safe spaces group that I facilitate is primarily on deconstructing these ideas and these systemic oppressive ideas. A lot of times it's so difficult because there's so much resistance that comes when we try to deconstruct, because that's the norm, that's what everyone does. So yeah, and again, as you said, the joy is in then deconstructing and making it visible to the world that this is what's happening. Yeah.
I was just thinking that the challenge in that, like, of being able to do that, it requires so much honesty, even with oneself, and the ability to listen to those little sort of stories that might be sneaking in, and then to be able to sort of be transparent and own up to that and bring that up and then deconstruct that for yourself, or be aware of it and then also do it with the person.
Yes.
I think, yeah, and it leads to such a sense of solidarity if you're able to do it. Like just those moments in sessions
Yeah.
where, I've just recently had a conversation with someone where we sort of deconstructed how anger is bad, and instead we sort of had this moment of just pure solidarity and how anger really, helps us in overthrowing some of these systems and resisting against them. So I think that just,
And that joy hits, right? Like when there's this feeling of like absolute I don't know, I just love that feeling when you know that this person felt understood and you understand that person. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's one of a
And
kind
just
of feeling. Yes, I think Ruby wants to say something.
yeah, just adding on to what you said, it's also like what all of you, three of you was talking about. It's also sort of moves into a space of really witnessing the human in the room and just connecting around those on those lines. I have moments like right now I was seeing this client and she was just talking about loneliness, and we spoke about this in so detail that we both teared up, and that was a sense of connect. And she felt so much more witnessed, so much more heard for what she was experiencing. And she said, "Oh, you're a therapist and you're crying about it. Why are you crying about it?" And that so much opens into just noticing that there's so much human into the room that comes up when we move into these sort of spaces. Yeah.
Yeah. Varsha and Madhuri, is there anything standing out or want to share something?
Yeah, so as everybody was talking, I had this like big smile on my face throughout, and I was just thinking about instances like these in my experience in my work with my clients, where and I could relate so much as to like how the struggle is with deconstructing the ideas, this ableistic ideas. I freshly remember this instance where my client was talking about how this ableistic idea of she needs to be a certain way and do this otherwise she's unfit and she's this and how that can distress, how that can cause so much distress to us, the system that we live in and the ableistic ideas that the world brings for us, and how that's such a struggle for us to make that visible, and also again like how much joy it brings for us if that happens. So yeah.
Yes.
And like Aarti was saying, we have this position of power in the room, right? And then we bring our own privileges and our own conditioning also, and our ideas, our value systems into the room, along with the professional position that we hold, right? And it becomes initially the person who is coming coming in as a client is not looking at being connected, right? They are looking at this stranger who they need to talk about their own life, right? How am I holding that space for them to say it's okay, right? We don't belong to the same community or same gender or whatever it is, but we are still human, right? Like Varsha was saying, that humanness, that Ruhi was saying, right? That human connect is still there. Like we can connect despite all the diversity we bring into the room. And once that happens, like Ruhi was saying, we tear up or somehow the client is able to talk and open up, it's such a joy to be there for someone. So basically, like, just be there, be this human in the room.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest joy I derive from the work we do every day.
I remember this one conversation I was having with, I think, Gupta, about how our profession is selflessly selfish, because we get so much joy out of just the help and the service that we give. It's like we're being selfish by providing our service, but then it's like so selfless as well at the same time. So as Madhuri was talking, I could just think of that conversation. So let's move to the next question, guys, if we all have answered. That is, what are some of the hopes that you have from the work that you do of diversity, intersectionality, and increasing the accessibility? What do you hope for the community, for yourself, for the world, when we do these things that we do?
We were doing this narrative workshop one of those days in the office, when we were all in the office sitting together, and me, Pooja, and someone else were we were doing some group activity, okay? And we were talking about how if there was no talk of gender or religion or capitalism or any of those things, uh, how would it be? So Pooja said there wouldn't be any shame,
Mm,
right? There would be no shame in being just being you, right? And I think the work we do also, we are looking at, like, I hope that whoever we work with, make them feel proud in who they are, feel comfortable in who they are, right? And look at themselves as deserving of all the joy they can get.
yeah. Looks like ma'am's having some thoughts there. She's smiling a lot. May I ask what's
You
going
want
on?
me to go? I was thinking, how do I beat that? But hope for myself, hope for the community that I work is solidarity. I'm borrowing from a friend of mine. She used to run a group in Nepal. She used to run a group called Imperfect Solidarities. And the hope is that for me as well, that to build community, my hope for myself and for the community that I work with is to feel that sense of solidarity in the pain and the joys that we experience. yeah, yeah, just to know that I have a space that where I can be heard, and that there is a place where someone can be heard. Their strengths and their hopes can be heard, and the pain can be held. That's the hope for me with us. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I just resonate and like it so much. Yeah.
I think for me, I mean, off of everything that's already been talked about, I think it's also like I really, really hope to continue to visibilize and stay in complexities and like the stickiness of the intersectionalities and the diversities that come up. So even the sort of sometimes, the challenges that come up in the diversity within the space, in the room itself, between me and the person that I'm working with. My hope is really to be able to stay with that, to visibilize that, to be able to hold it with care and to not move away or look away from complexities and I think the nuances of that, because I think I feel like that's what can allow for more holding in that sort of way that can create solidarity. That's been my hope for myself, that I continue to be able to do that and that I can do that for people and with them.
Yeah. As you were talking, Pooja, I could think of when we were young, there used to be this cartoon called Scooby Doo, and so they used to unmask these ghosts, and those ghosts actually used to be people. And when you said like visualize, I thought of like unmasking these systems, like making it visible that it's these things and not you. Yeah, and just doing that for people and for ourselves. It's, it's truly what we hope for as a team, I think.
That's a beautiful metaphor, Papa.
Yeah.
I never watched Scooby-Doo, but I will at least watch this part. It's so pretty.
Any episode will have it. So.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, by the end of each episode, they'll unmask this ghost, and that'll actually be a person. So,
each time.
yeah.
Yeah, I think for me too, the hope is that how similar to what Madhuri ma'am was saying, that for us, for humans to just uh, be proud of our existence, that we don't have to fit this criteria, that be in a certain way as humans, and so certify these things. If you know I don't know if I'm hoping for too much here, but if we can have that as humans, where we're just okay with our existence as to however we are, and that we are not supposed to do this, then I think that's what I hope for the community and for myself too, that I'm okay with whatever I'm doing and whatever I am.
Yeah.
And it's so hard, no? Even to like, it sounds so basic, but it's so hard to just be okay with a lot of things. And that's, I think, one of the biggest hopes as well. Ruhi, any thoughts on what you hope?
It's the hope is again on a larger end too. Of course, piggybacking on whatever everybody said, but the hope is also to make mental health accessible to people in margins, not specifically around the lens, because there's so much of masking around just mental health and who can have access to it because of that system that we are subscribed to. So that's the larger hope. Because there's so much joy. I remember one of a workshop, that training program that we did in one of the space, like it's called Shahi in Old City, where we just went there and we were all like packed up with our knowledge, packed up with certain stuff around our lives. But when we just moved into that, like just the entry into that spot has made me feel like, oh, I'm like an alien that has entered into this spot. Right. But when we started to have conversations with these people were so much of joyness, so much of humanness, so much of you just need to like be there and ask them the right questions, or just have that openness to have conversations with them. There's so much that they can provide. I've learned a lot just being present in there. So there's so much scope there, and so much of these spaces needs visibility. So that's the hope, that these spaces get visible and access to mental health and access to just becoming aware about what this is. Yeah, so that's the hope.
Yeah, I think also for me, just normalizing mental health, making it more,
Yeah.
okay, sort of a thing, and being a safe space to the world for myself,
Mm.
for people around, and yeah, we're towards the end of this conversation, and the second last question, guys, is how do we hold on to these hopes that we just shared? What will help us stay on these things? Um, or what is helping you to hold on to this right now?
Hmm.
I think.
Go ahead, Pooja.
No, I was gonna say you all. Like just working on all helps me hold on. It really does. I think any conversation that we have just reaffirms it so much. And also the people I work with, like the people I see in therapy,
Yeah.
I think each time I see them, it's like as there are days when sometimes I'll be feeling so hopeless, and then I'll just be in a session and I feel like, oh, I can come back to this. And I think it's the people. For me, it's the people that I work with and you all, and yeah, that really helps me.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely after every session or after every safe space conversation, I'm like, I'm so happy I did this, or this is the work I love to do. So I think each time we do this, it reaffirms, as you said, a hope or the work that we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what I feel is this community of like at pause, the community of counselors we are. It's like it's not about like being perfect as a counselor or knowing every solution for all the problems and stuff like that, or not even about you not struggling with your own problems or with your own life situations, right? It's about knowing that there is a community, there is support, we can reach out, we can talk it out, right? There is help available. I think that holds the space for me.
Yeah. I think for me, I don't know. I'm sounding. I mean, it's a hard question because it puts me right back into acknowledging that it's a hard experience to have. To do this work and not cave into what is comfortable from your privileged spaces, right? As a Savarna woman, it's easy for me to ignore or let pass on by some of the things that are happening in the world that might impact people's mental health, that people that come to see us and their mental health. But how do I not do that? How do I ensure that I am accountable for the space that I'm holding, and also how do I mean, and that's the thing, right? Accountability and responsibility need not it's not need not be connected to shame and guilt. In the absence of responsibility, accountability, we don't have to connect into shame and guilt, but we do. That's the way the world works, that we are not doing something, then you're shamed for it or you're blamed for it. But so how do we hold on to this hope? uh, we can only hold on to this hope. I mean, it's coming back to the same things that you guys are saying, conversations with people that we feel connected to. For me, it's all of you and the people that we work with, right? That you can't unsee these things after you see them, and then you can't not practice responsibility and accountability if you're continuing to stay in the field.
but it's not to say that it's easy work at all, that it's very painful sometimes, that you're standing up to a whole force field of a system. But so it's really important to care for oneself too in the process, and work from a space of compassion for ourselves and others. Yeah, it's yeah, that's
That's so beautifully put. Yeah.
Yeah, so many things, right? Like there is accountability, there is this privilege that we have to acknowledge, and yeah, it's just difficult. Yeah.
Uh, so what was coming up for me is that agreeing to what everybody said, that yes, having conversations with people, I derive energy from that sometimes. I derive energy from people around me, the space that I'm in. But also when we're really talking about hope as to what drives me, or that helps me continue to be in this space. So I was remembering this metaphor that Ravi was using recently in one of the workshops. So this metaphor of how there is a wall and trees start growing in that wall, and how we are those trees. Yes, there is this huge wall that can be difficult to break, but if this is small roots and small plants and trees that keep growing in those walls, and one day those roots become so strong that you can't break them. And whenever I feel like what I'm doing is only like a tiny part, there's still so many uh, uh, so much going on around me, so much violence and so much oppression going around me, and I feel like hopeless, like this what I'm doing doesn't matter, doesn't account. This is just like with one person I'm doing, just with people around me, 10 people around me, and this comes up for me that I need to continue to do this and just be in this space. So that's what gives me hope for to be able to do this.
Yeah, I think
Have
it's
that hope.
I think it's a beautiful metaphor. I think it just connects everything that we spoke about. That our work is difficult. The work to continue to do it is also difficult. But then to know that these little roots, once strongly embedded, will break the walls. So it was a lovely conversation, you guys, to be here and talk to you all about this on this Mental Health Day. Before we end, I would just want you all to want to thank you all for being here, and just say one word that's coming up for you as we end this conversation. Yeah, how was this? How was it to talk about this and what's standing up? And then we can end it. And yeah,
Joy and hope.
Mm.
It's very similar. Like I was, as we were talking, I was thinking about this other video that we did, the social media thing, and this is very similar feeling that I'm experiencing right now. That there's so much joy and hope that I'm having. And I was remembering that no, it was late when we were recording that video, and I went home, but like usually I sulk like, oh my god, I got late, and then my parents also like, no, what is it about it? But after I went home, I had this great feeling throughout the day, and it carried a little bit the next day also. And so that is what I'm experiencing right now. And I know that after we end this conversation, I will feel like this for the rest of the day. So yeah, joy. Okay.
Solidarity for me. Really, I love you guys, and it's just nice to have you around. Feels very safe to walk into pause many days.
yeah.
Yeah. For me, there is hope, lot of hope, and the sense of security also, that like that comes with hope.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
I was gonna say solidarity.
Oh, tell you what.
Yeah. That and also warmth, I think. Right now, I just have a nice little ball of warmth in my torso right now. So that's nice.
Yeah. Ruhi?
For me, this seems very fulfilling and also hope for more visibility.
Yeah, I think I don't have a word. I have a feeling in my chest. It's like some sort of warmth again, and just an opening, and just a lot of pride and happiness, and just in saying that these are my people. I don't know, and this is my community. So that, yeah. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Thank you, people, for coming. Hope to see you all in the next episode of Little More Closer. Yeah, thank you, and have a nice day. Goodbye.
Thank you, Rafa. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.